Hey, in this video I'm going to show you how to recreate a customized checkbox component that you can be used in multiple places. When you are in WeWeb, you have access to this checkbox component, and when you drop that into the Canva, you can see that in the variable panel you have a new variable, and the variable is controlled by the state of the checkbox. But if you try to create a reusable component out of this, it will not work as intended. So if you try and I create a checkbox component, and if I go back in my variable panel and I try to toggle this on and off, we can see that the value is not updated anymore. And if we reload the page, we will see that the variable have disappeared from this panel. That means that it's no longer exposed on the outside. And that is because now the variable that was available is scoped inside of the components. And to make that available again, we need to expose a new variable to the outside. And for that, we can go inside of our components, inside of the edit mode, and create a new variable. We can call that value. And same as before, it will have a Boolean type, and we can set the initial state to false. And we have to expose the value outside of the components. And we can hit create. If we look at our left panel here, we can see that we have the new variable that we created, true and false, but it's not yet linked to the state of our checkbox. If we try and go out and we toggle on and off this checkbox, nothing happens on the left panel. And what we need to do now is create a new workflow that will change the value of a checkbox when we click on it. For now, let's create a new workflow and have it on execution trigger. And on action, we can have the change variable value, and we can select the variable that we just created. And the value will be the opposite of the current value. And if we try this action, we can see that on the left here, the value is toggling on and off. And that's what we want to happen when we click on the checkbox. So let's rename that toggle value. And now what we need to do is create a new workflow on our checkbox. And each time the value changes on that checkbox, we will execute a workflow. That is the one that we just created. And now once we do that and we go back here on the view mode, if I click on our checkbox, each time the checkbox changes the value, it will update the variable that we created. That's the first step in having a checkbox component. Now the issue is that if we try and use that checkbox inside of a collection list, let me try and bind that to an array that is just a bunch of objects with an ID and a Boolean value. And if I reload the page and if we go back to the variable panel, by binding it to our collection of 2 items, we would expect that on the left panel we would have 2 checkbox variables, but it's not the case. If I try and toggle this on and off, nothing happens. That is because now that our checkboxes are linked to our collections, the values are not held by the checkbox anymore. They are held by the collection. And to reflect that, we need to make some modification to our checkboxes. What we want to do is that since the value is held by the collection, we need the checkbox to reflect the state of the variable. What we want is that when we click on the checkbox, the first item, the ID one here, changes to true or false. And if we click on the second one, then that would be the second item that changes its value. And to do that, we need to go back inside of our checkbox component and we need to add a trigger. We can call that trigger on change. And inside of our workflow, we will emit a trigger that will be on change, and we are going to pass the value inside of our trigger. And let's go back into our checkbox instance, and I will create a new variable on click, and I will create a new workflow that will be emitted on change, so that is when our checkbox changes its value. What we want to do then is change what is inside the filter, and we will replace only one item that is located at the current index, so that will be item.index. And on that case, that will be a partial update, and the path will be value, and the value will be the one that is inside of our events, and that would be equal to the state of the checkbox. If I toggle on and off the checkboxes, then both the filters and the checkbox share the same values, and that's exactly what we want. The last thing that we need to do is that on page load, we actually want the checkbox to reflect the current value of the variable. And for that, we will need a new property, initial state, that will be bound to the initial state of the checkbox. So let's create a new property. Let's call that initial state of type boolean. We can set that to false. And if we go back here inside of our instances, we can bind that to the value of the current item. And lastly, we can go back inside of our checkbox, and to the initial value here, we can bind to our new property. So now the default value of my filters here is true and false. And if I reload the page, we should have true and false on our checkboxes. So that is working. So that's how you create a checkbox component that you can use as a standalone, or you can use inside of a collection and also have access to its value. If you want more videos like this, don't hesitate to subscribe, leave a like or comments. See you on the next one. Bye.